everyone. Welcome back to the English Journey podcast. We're on day 7, and today's topic is one of the most requested ones: the secret to thinking in English. If you've ever struggled with translating every single word in your head or just couldn't get the flow of English, this one's for you.
Yeah, thinking in English is a game changer, right? But honestly, it's easier said than done. So many learners get stuck in the habit of mentally translating from their native language, and that can slow them down. But there's hope. We're going to talk about some simple tricks that'll help you shift your mindset.
Exactly. It's not magic, but with some consistency and practice, it's totally possible to start thinking in English naturally. So Zero, tell us, how do you think you can start?
Well, the first thing is immersion. And I don't mean just watching English movies or reading books, although that's important. I mean, you've got to surround yourself with English in everyday situations. For example, when you're walking down the street, try to mentally describe what you see in English.
That's a great point. Like, there's a blue car on the corner, or that cafe looks cozy. It's simple stuff. But if you're constantly practicing this, your brain starts making the connections faster. The more you use English in your thoughts, the more it becomes second nature.
Exactly. And something that helped me a lot was thinking in English, even when I'm not actively using the language. For instance, when I'm doing something routine, like washing dishes or getting ready in the morning, I try to describe my actions in English in my mind. I'm putting soap on the sponge. Or, I'm brushing my teeth.
Oh, I love that. It's all about making English a natural part of your daily life, right? And by the way, this works for any language, not just English. The key is engagement. And to make it easier, you could start with small phrases you already know, like "I'm hungry" or "What time is it?" as you go about your day.
Yes. And don't worry if you make mistakes when you're thinking in English. The point is that you're practicing and letting your brain start to form those connections. Over time, you'll notice that the language feels more familiar.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of mistakes, another thing that really helps is to stop translating in your head. You know, people sometimes get stuck thinking in their native language first, then translating word for word into English. That can break your flow, and it just feels unnatural.
Yeah, that's something I used to do a lot, especially when I was learning. But eventually, I realized that if I kept translating everything, I'd never speak fluently. I had to break that habit and just let myself think in English, even if I didn't know every single word.
Right? It's all about building your vocabulary and trusting that even if you don't know one word, you can still explain things in other ways. So, Zero, what would you suggest to our listeners who are struggling with that? How can they stop translating?
Well, first, try to think in chunks. So, instead of thinking of individual words, try to think in phrases or sentences. For example, instead of just thinking I and am, try thinking I am learning English or I love studying new languages.
Great advice. So, kind of think of your thoughts as whole ideas in English, rather than breaking them down word by word. And another trick is to focus on visualizing what you're trying to say. When you see an image in your mind, try to name it in English.
Right? Like, if you're looking at a tree, don't just think tree. Think the tree is tall, or I see a big green tree. The more you do that, the easier it gets to stop translating and just flow in English.
Yeah, and it makes your thinking process feel much smoother. Also, you can talk to yourself in English. It sounds a bit funny, but honestly, it works. Try describing what you're doing out loud. For example, if you're cooking dinner, say, "I'm chopping the onions," or "I'm stirring the soup." You'll notice that your mind starts processing faster.
Ha 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 ha. Yes, I totally agree. People might think you're crazy, but who cares? It's your language journey and it's worth it. Plus, talking to yourself helps you build confidence because you're literally practicing in real time.
Exactly. And don't forget, listening plays a big role in this too. If you're exposed to English a lot through podcasts, music, or TV, you'll start absorbing the flow of the language. The more you hear it, the more familiar it becomes, and you'll start thinking in those patterns.
That's a great point. It's like when you hear someone use a phrase a few times, it just sticks in your head. Over time, you'll use it yourself without even thinking about it. It's like building muscle memory for your brain.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. Creating those neural connections. You're training your brain to think in English automatically. So, for our listeners out there, here's a quick recap of today's tips. 1. Immersion. Surround yourself with English in your daily life. 2. Think in chunks. Focus on phrases, not individual words. 3. Visualize. Picture things and name them in English. 4. Talk to yourself. It might sound odd, but it works. 5. Listen. Absorb English through music, podcasts, and shows.
And most importantly, be patient with yourself. This takes time, but you'll start to notice progress. Just keep practicing, and soon enough, thinking in English will feel completely natural.
That's a wrap for day 7, everyone. We hope these tips help you start thinking in English more fluently. Keep practicing, and don't forget, little by little, it all adds up.
Catch you next time. And remember, the more you think in English, the closer you get to fluency.
See you in the next episode. Bye, guys.